Mark Twain said, "There's no such thing as a new idea. Pretending an idea or a strategy is new doesn't help." Are you going to keep nuking Godzilla? You shouldn't. Are you going to keep trying to kill Dracula by opening his coffin at dusk? I hope not. You have to acknowledge what's failed in the past and honestly examine why, then adjust. Anything less guarantees failure. Welcome back, and thank you for wanting to know the facts and the truth. What's going on in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is big. You can't miss it on the news. You can't miss it on college campuses, and you really can't miss it online. But what are the facts? Why is this happening? That's what we're here to answer. Our approach is to examine the major themes and focus on the important events that help you make sense of what's happening today. We care about knowing the truth. We care about the basic human right to live in peace. We care about ending the suffering. We care about finding justice, and we think you're here because you do too. The only path for us then is to go after the facts and be open to what they show us. Life can be beautiful without hatred, violence, and war, and maybe the way there starts with better understanding each other. Better understanding the Jewish people, the Palestinian people, the history of their conflicts and past peace efforts, and some of the major issues standing in the way of forging real peace. What the Hell is Going On in Gaza is a 9-part series made up of 30 episodes, each designed to help you understand a different but important part of the picture. As part 4 of our series continues, we'll consider the fact that there have been attempts to find peace between Israel and the Palestinians for decades and decades. Why has it failed so many times? What's really going on? Here in episode 19, we're going to take a closer look at the issue of land for peace, an idea that definitely isn't new. Let's get into it. As we'll cover in this episode, there have already been a few land for peace deals in the history of Israeli-Arab peace negotiations. But let's talk about the one that's most relevant today, the one that has played out over the last 20 years, the one that exploded on October 7th. This one was known as the Gaza disengagement. Here's the history. In the 1947 United Nations Partition Plan, Gaza was intended to be part of a new independent Palestinian state. Even though the Arabs rejected the plan, Gaza was not part of Israel. Instead, it fell to Egyptian control. Egypt created the All-Palestine Protectorate to govern Gaza and installed Haj Amin al-Husseini as its president. He played a significant role in the riots and violence that characterized the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, a strategy that ultimately resulted in misery for Palestinian Arabs. The All-Palestine Protectorate did not exist for very long, eventually dissolving into the more accurate reality of Egyptian occupation. By 1953, it was gone. In the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel captured Gaza. We covered this in more detail in episode 16. Israel had been attacked by multiple Arab countries. Against the odds, Israel won the war, and it kept certain territories necessary for defense against such an attack happening again. This included the Gaza Strip, which by then had been under Egyptian control for almost 20 years. In 2005, Israel decided it had had enough of the violence and the terror attacks that occurred while it occupied Gaza, so it left. Israel's hope was that giving Palestinians full control of Gaza would lead to peace. When Israel left Gaza in 2005, it dismantled 21 Israeli settlements and removed some 8,500 Israelis from inside the Gaza Strip, turning full control of Gaza over to the Palestinians. It was not easy for Israel to remove its citizens from Gaza. The government faced resistance and protests. For the Israelis who lived there, being forced from their homes was very painful. The departure of the Israelis was celebrated by the Palestinians, and much of the Israeli-built infrastructure left behind was looted and destroyed. Greenhouses for agriculture and various other infrastructure that could have been useful in their new state was instead gleefully destroyed by the Palestinians. The Los Angeles Times reported that, quote, Palestinian looters took irrigation hoses, pumps, and plastic sheeting from dozens of greenhouses Tuesday, a month after Jewish American donors bought more than 3,000 of the structures from Israeli settlers and transferred them to the Palestinian Authority. It was not a very encouraging start for the strategy of land for peace. Here's how NBC News reported it. Quote, Palestinians looted dozens of greenhouses on Tuesday, walking off with irrigation hoses, water pumps, and plastic sheeting in a blow to fledgling efforts to reconstruct the Gaza Strip. American Jewish donors had bought more than 3,000 greenhouses from Israeli settlers in Gaza for $14 million last month and transferred them to the Palestinian Authority. Former World Bank President James Wolfensohn, who brokered the deal, put up $500,000 of his own cash. Jewish donors hoped to both ease the pain of the forced removal of Israelis from Gaza and help Palestinians jumpstart their economy and improve their lives. That's not what happened, though. Property that formerly was owned by Jews, infrastructure that could have been put to good use by Palestinians, even though it now belonged to Palestinians, was looted and destroyed. Of course, that's not all. As we discussed in earlier episodes, given this opportunity for self-rule, effectively having their own state in Gaza, Palestinians in Gaza chose Hamas to lead them. And instead of working to create prosperity for Palestinians, Hamas seized full control, then focused almost all of its efforts, used almost all of its tax revenue, and used billions in international aid to pursue the destruction of Israel and the murder of Jews. The result? Violence, war, misery. Land for Peace was a total failure. Almost immediately after taking control of Gaza, Hamas launched an ongoing campaign of rocket attacks. This table shows the now decades-long pattern of rocket attacks against Israel, which increased significantly once Hamas came to power. What it doesn't show are the many bus bombings, car rammings, and suicide bombings carried out against Israeli civilians year after year. Land for Peace had been tried before too. For example, in southern Lebanon, Israel had occupied southern Lebanon in response to many years of attacks against Israel from the region by the PLO and other Islamist militias. Israel formed an alliance with Lebanese Christian groups, hoping that might be Lebanon's future. It was not, and ultimately, in 1999, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak hoped Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon might bring peace. It did not. Instead, the Iranian proxy group Hezbollah, a brutal terrorist group similar to Hamas, took control and has waged a campaign of terrorism against Israel ever since. Land for Peace did not lead to peace in this case either. Again, the reason is that the other side has no interest in peace with Israel on any terms. It's not about the prosperity or security of the Lebanese people, and it certainly isn't about land. Another example of Land for Peace is the United Nations Partition Plan. It represented a compromise. The land that the UN offered to the Jews in 1947 was far less than the historic Kingdom of Israel. It did not include Judea, which is where the name Jew comes from. It did not include Samaria, and it did not include places that were important in Jewish history, like Jerusalem and Bethlehem. The Jews accepted anyway. They willingly compromised for peace. The Arabs would not. In the 75-plus years since then, this story has repeated over and over. The Israelis are willing to compromise because their fundamental objective is peace. The Palestinians have not been willing to compromise because their fundamental objective is to wipe Israel from the face of the earth. Other countries around the world have tried Land for Peace before and also failed. Ukraine tried Land for Peace, perhaps unwillingly, with an enemy that said it wanted all of the land, just as the Palestinians have said so consistently for decades. Losing Crimea and parts of eastern Ukraine to Russia brought no peace to Ukraine. We cannot say that Land for Peace cannot work, but it requires that both parties actually want peace. Today, Russia does not want peace with Ukraine. It wants Ukraine. Similarly, Palestinians do not want peace with Israel. They want Israel. Under these conditions, Land for Peace is not a solution. Sadly, there is no rational basis for thinking Land for Peace will work, at least today, and for as long as Palestinian leaders still only want one thing: the complete elimination of the State of Israel. This remains the fundamental impediment to peace. It is why every offer of peace since the Peel Commission's recommended two-state solution in 1937 has been rejected, and there have been many offers. Thank you for watching episode 19 and part 4 of our series. Hopefully now you have a better understanding of the facts behind Land for Peace. If you'd like to leave a comment or get in touch, visit our website at www.getthefactsmiddleeast.com. This was just a start. There's a lot more to learn, so please keep going and check out episode 20, where we'll discuss a question that has significant implications for the peace process. Did Israel give up? Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your interest in learning more about the war in Gaza. And remember, where there is no knowledge, there can be no insight.